7 times. 7. And he saw every single one. He just turned his phone face down and kept laughing with his mistress. By the time he came home, it was too late and she died alone in a chair by the window, still wearing the bracelet he gave her. Hey, if this story is already pulling at your heart, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We drop stories like this every week and you do not want to miss what's coming next. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing your locations. Amara Johnson was 7 years old the first time she understood that some people leave and never come back. Her father, David Johnson, was the kind of man who smelled like cedarwood and always had a butterscotch candy in his shirt pocket just for her. He called her his little sunrise, because she was born at 6:04 in the morning and he said the whole sky turned gold when she arrived. He was a quiet man. Not the loud, showy kind of love. Just steady. Always there. Always watching out for her. Then one Tuesday morning he wasn't. Heart attack. 43 years old. Gone before the ambulance even pulled out of the driveway of their small but warm home in Charlotte, North Carolina. Amara remembered standing in the hallway in her pajamas, watching strangers wheel a stretcher out the front door. She didn't cry right away. She just stood there, holding her butterscotch candy, waiting for him to come back and tell her it was all some kind of mistake. He never did. Her mother, Linda, grieved hard. Too hard, maybe. And grief does something strange to people. It makes them reach for the nearest warm body just to feel less alone. Within 2 years, Linda had married a man named Gerald Simmons. Gerald wore nice suits, said all the right things at dinner, held Linda's hand in church every Sunday like he was the most devoted husband in all of Mecklenburg County. But behind closed doors, Gerald Simmons was a different man entirely. He never hit Amara. He was too smart for that. Instead, he used words. Cold, sharp, invisible words that left no bruises but cut deeper than anything physical ever could. He told her she was too much. That she was dramatic. That she made things up for attention. When she tried to tell her mother what was happening, Gerald would shake his head slowly with this look of practiced sadness, like he was so disappointed in her, and Linda would sigh and say, "Amara, why do you always do this?" Always. Like it had happened 100 times. Like Amara was the problem. So she stopped telling. She just learned to be small. Learned to stay in her room. Learned to eat quickly and disappear before Gerald decided to remind her how ungrateful she was for the roof over her head. She had one friend through all of it, Vanessa Cole. They had grown up on the same street, gone to the same schools, shared the same lunch table since 4th grade. Vanessa knew about Gerald. She was the only one who did. And back then, she held Amara's secrets like they were sacred things. Or so Amara believed. By the time Amara turned 24, she was living in a tiny studio apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, working double shifts at a hotel front desk and trying to put together a life out of scraps. She talked to her mother maybe once a month. Always polite. Always surface level. The kind of conversations where both people know there's a wall between them but neither one says it out loud. Vanessa had moved to Atlanta too, said she wanted to be close to Amara, and Amara believed that too. It was Vanessa who first introduced her to Kang Min-ho. They were at a rooftop event in Midtown Atlanta, one of those gatherings where everyone is dressed like they belong on a magazine cover and the drinks cost more than Amara's hourly wage. Vanessa had gotten the invitation through a friend of a friend, she said. Amara almost didn't go. She was tired from a double shift and her feet were screaming. But Vanessa had pulled out her best puppy eyes and said, "Come on, Amara, when's the last time we actually did something fun?" So she went. Kang Min-ho was standing near the railing overlooking the Atlanta skyline. He wasn't the tallest man in the room. Wasn't the loudest. But there was something about the way he stood, completely still, completely calm, while everything buzzed around him, that made Amara's eyes stop on him and stay there. He noticed her noticing him. And he smiled. Not a smirk. Not that look men give when they think they've already won. Just a real, genuine, slightly surprised smile, like he hadn't expected to see someone like her there either. His name came later. So did the conversation that lasted until the rooftop emptied and the staff started stacking chairs around them without saying a word because something about Min-Ho made people hesitant to interrupt him. He asked her questions. Real questions. Not "what do you do?" or "where are you from?" He asked her what made her laugh until her stomach hurt. He asked her what her favorite road trip memory was. He asked her if she believed people could change. She didn't know then that the last question was the most important one. What she knew was that for the first time in a very long time, she felt seen. Not like a burden. Not like a problem. Not like someone to be managed. Just seen. Min-Ho was Korean-American, born in Seoul but raised mostly between Los Angeles and New York. He was 31. He had money, serious money, though he was careful about how much he said about where it came from. He told her he was in business. Import and export, he said, with a smile that was just small enough to be mysterious. Later, she would learn what kind of business. But not yet. In those early months, Min-Ho was everything David Johnson had been, steady, attentive, protective, but wrapped in this quiet power that made Amara feel safe in a way she hadn't felt since she was 7 years old holding a butterscotch candy. He sent her flowers to the hotel front desk on random Tuesdays. Not roses. He asked her favorite flower first. She said sunflowers, and from then on, it was always sunflowers. Big, yellow, ridiculous bouquets of them that made her coworkers stop and stare. He took her to Savannah for a weekend, just to walk the cobblestone streets and eat shrimp and grits at a place with no Yelp page because it was that local. He held her hand as they walked through Forsyth Park. He bought her a green dress from a boutique on Broughton Street because he said it matched her eyes when she laughed. He stood outside the fitting room and waited patiently while she tried on 4 different options, and when she came out in the green one, he just nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, that one." They drove back to Atlanta with the windows down and a playlist she had made specifically for long drives, and he memorized every song and asked her about every single one. He took her to a little arcade in Buckhead one rainy Saturday, not because it was fancy but because she had mentioned offhand once that she used to love arcades as a kid. He was absolutely terrible at every game. She beat him at air hockey 4 times in a row. He was genuinely annoyed. She laughed so hard she had to sit down. He pretended to demand a rematch and lost again. She still teased him about it months later and he still made the exact same face. He flew her to Chicago for her birthday. Just a weekend. Navy Pier. Deep dish pizza that she said was overrated and he dramatically disagreed with. They argued about it the whole way home and neither of them budged an inch. It became their thing, that pizza argument. An ongoing debate with no winner. He gave her a bracelet on that trip. Simple gold. Her name engraved on the inside. Not flashy. Just personal. She wore it every single day after that. When she finally told him about Gerald, about the years of being made to feel invisible in her own home, Min-Ho went very quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Processing quiet. Then he said, "You're not going back there. Not ever. You hear me?" She heard him. She believed him. 6 months later, he proposed. Not with a grand gesture. They were sitting in his penthouse in Buckhead, eating takeout noodles from containers, watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures that Amara had insisted was fascinating and Min-Ho had pretended to find boring while secretly paying close attention to every single fact. He just set down his container, looked at her, and said, "Marry me." She stared at him. "Right now? Just like that?" "I've been thinking about it for 3 months," he said. "I'm not a big speech guy. But I'm sure." She said yes. They got married in a small ceremony in Nashville, Tennessee. Rented a beautiful old house with string lights in the garden. 20 people. Her mother came but Gerald did not. Amara had made that very clear. Vanessa was maid of honor, standing right there at the front, smiling her biggest smile. Amara wore ivory. Min-Ho wore a dark navy suit. They wrote their own vows. His were short. He wasn't a big speech guy, remember? But every word landed like it had been chosen carefully and kept for a long time before being released. She thought she had finally escaped everything that had tried to break her. She had no idea she had just walked into something worse. Hey, if this story is already pulling at your heart, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We drop stories like this every week and you do not want to miss what's coming next. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing your locations. There are some truths that hide in plain sight. They sit right there in front of you, calm as anything, wearing a familiar face, waiting for you to stop looking directly at them so they can do their damage. Amara had no idea her father had left her anything. David Johnson had been a quiet man with quiet habits, and one of those habits was planning ahead without making a fuss about it. Before he died, he had put together a trust in Amara's name. Property in Charlotte. A piece of land in rural Tennessee that had been in his family for 3 generations. A life insurance policy with a payout that, combined with interest accumulated over the years since his death, had grown into something significant. Very significant. The kind of significant that changes everything. The trust had been managed by a family attorney, an older man named Mr. Clarence Webb, who had known David since they were both young men. The plan had always been that Amara would receive full access to the inheritance when she turned 25. Mr. Webb had tried to reach Linda multiple times over the years to inform her, but Linda had never properly passed the information to Amara. Whether that was Gerald's doing or just Linda's own avoidance of anything connected to David, Amara never fully found out. But Vanessa knew. Vanessa had found out 2 years before the Atlanta rooftop party. She had overheard a phone call between Linda and Mr. Webb during a visit to Charlotte, back when Vanessa still visited Amara's mother occasionally. She had heard the words, trust fund, property, and millions, and had quietly filed that information away like a card she was waiting to play. She had told Min-Ho everything before she ever introduced them. That was the real reason for the rooftop party. The invitation wasn't from a friend of a friend. It was from Min-Ho himself, arranged deliberately, because Vanessa had come to him with a proposal and he had been interested. Very interested. The sunflowers. The arcade. The Chicago birthday. The green dress. The vows in Nashville. All of it had been a plan. Not every single smile. Min-Ho was complicated in ways Amara would later spend a long time trying to understand. But the beginning? The targeting? That was deliberate. Amara turned 25 3 months after the wedding. And that was when Min-Ho started talking about managing their future together. He came home one evening with a leather folder and set it on the dining table of their Buckhead penthouse. He had this calm energy about him, the same energy she had always found so steady and reassuring. He sat across from her and explained that he wanted to consolidate their assets. "We're married," he said. "What's yours is mine and what's mine is yours. That's how this works." She asked him what she was signing. He explained it in layers. A lot of words. A lot of calm, reasonable-sounding sentences. Something about joint ownership. Something about estate planning. Something about protecting her in case anything happened to him, given the nature of his business. She trusted him. Completely. She signed. She didn't know that Mr. Clarence Webb had finally made direct contact with her 2 weeks earlier, a letter that had arrived at the penthouse and that Min-Ho had intercepted before she ever saw it. She didn't know that the documents she signed that evening had been drafted by Min-Ho's personal attorney, a man who owed him several very serious favors and asked no questions. She didn't know that with her signature, everything David Johnson had left her, the Charlotte property, the Tennessee land, the insurance payout, all of it, had been quietly, legally transferred into an account and entity structure that belonged entirely to Kong Min-Ho. She found out on an ordinary Wednesday. She had gone to visit Mr. Webb in person. She had eventually found his contact information through an old family friend in Charlotte. She drove the 4 hours alone, thinking it was just a formality. Thinking she was going to hear about an inheritance she and Min-Ho would celebrate together. Mr. Webb was 80 years old and had the kind of face that couldn't hide things. When she sat down across from him and told him she was David Johnson's daughter, he looked at her for a long moment with something in his eyes that she couldn't read at first. Then he pulled out a file and laid it gently on the desk and told her that the assets had already been transferred. 2 months ago. He had received the signed documentation. Her signature was right there at the bottom of every page. Amara sat very still. She looked at her signature. She remembered that calm evening. The leather folder. Min-Ho's steady voice explaining things in layers. He told me it was estate planning, she said quietly. He told me it was to protect me. Mr. Webb looked at her with that face that couldn't hide things. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She drove back to Atlanta in silence. For hours. She didn't turn on the playlist. Didn't stop for food. Just drove with both hands on the wheel and this cold, spreading feeling in her chest like something had cracked open inside her and the air was getting in. When she got home, Min-Ho was in the living room. She stood in the doorway and looked at him and said, "I went to see Mr. Webb today." He looked up from his phone. His face changed, just slightly. Just enough. "You knew," she said. Not a question. He set his phone down. And then he did something she hadn't expected. He didn't deny it. He just looked at her with this expression she had never seen on him before, something flat and final, and he said, "It's handled, Amara. Don't make this complicated." Something broke in her in that moment. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, completely, like a light going out. She called Vanessa that night. Because who else was there? Who else had she ever had? Vanessa answered on the third ring. And in the background, very faintly, Amara heard music. Familiar music. The same playlist she played in Min-Ho's car on long drives. The one she had made specifically for road trips. "Where are you?" Amara asked. The pause. Slightly too long. "Just out," Vanessa said. "But, you okay?" Amara knew then. She didn't have all the pieces yet, but she knew. The way you know when a room has changed while you were away, you can't point to exactly what moved, but you feel it. "Yeah," she said. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Within the next 2 weeks, she found out everything. A receipt that fell out of Min-Ho's jacket. A message she wasn't supposed to see. A conversation overheard between Min-Ho and a man she didn't recognize, where her name was mentioned casually, the wife, the way you refer to a piece of furniture. Vanessa and Min-Ho had been involved for over a year before the wedding. Probably longer. Everything Vanessa had ever known about Amara, her pain, her history, her need for safety, had been handed over and used against her. People always say that betrayal is the worst part. But they're wrong. The worst part is what comes after the betrayal, when the person who hurt you stops pretending and lets you see exactly who they always were. Min-Ho stopped pretending almost overnight. It was like a switch. 1 week he was still maintaining the performance, coming home at a reasonable hour, sitting at the same dinner table, keeping up the basic shape of a marriage. The next week he just stopped. No explanation. No conversation. He simply stopped performing and started living however he wanted, right in front of her. Vanessa started appearing at the penthouse. Not sneaking in through back doors. Coming through the front. Taking off her shoes at the entrance like she lived there. Opening the refrigerator and commenting on what needed to be restocked. Sitting on the couch in Amara's living room with her legs curled under her, laughing at something on her phone. Like Amara was invisible. Like Amara was the guest. The first time it happened, Amara stood in the kitchen doorway and stared at Vanessa on that couch for a full 10 seconds. Vanessa looked up, met her eyes, and then looked back at her phone without saying a word. Min-Ho walked in from the bedroom and saw Amara standing there. "Vanessa's staying for dinner," he said. Just like that. Not a question. An announcement. Amara opened her mouth. "Don't," Min-Ho said quietly. Just that one word. Said the way someone says it when they are very tired of you and not bothering to hide it anymore. She closed her mouth. She ate in the bedroom that night. This became the new normal. Vanessa visited more and more frequently. Sometimes she and Min-Ho would go out together and come back late. Sometimes they didn't come back until the next morning. Amara would hear them downstairs, laughing, talking, existing in the space that was supposed to be hers. Min-Ho stopped bringing her sunflowers. Obviously. But he also stopped acknowledging her in basic ways. He stopped saying good morning. Stopped asking if she had eaten. Stopped making eye contact unless he absolutely had to. Vanessa, on the other hand, looked at Amara plenty. But the way she looked at her had changed completely. There was this satisfied little smile she wore sometimes, barely there, easy to miss, that said everything about how she felt about the situation. "Must be hard," Vanessa said once, when they happened to be in the kitchen at the same time. Being in a house this big and still feeling so small. Amara didn't respond. "Your sunflowers are wilting, by the way," Vanessa added, nodding toward the old dried flowers Amara had kept in a vase by the window because she couldn't bring herself to throw them away. Maybe it's time to let go of things that are already dead. Still, Amara said nothing. Because what was there to say? She had no money. The inheritance was gone. She had no family she could call. Her mother would probably side with Gerald's version of events just like she always had. She had no friends. The only friend she'd ever trusted had been the one who built the trap. She tried, once, to get legal help. She called 3 attorneys in Atlanta and explained the situation. 2 of them went quiet when she mentioned Minho's name. The third one was polite but told her, gently, that without proof of deception at the time of signing, a challenge would be very difficult. Minho's reach was long. She had known he was powerful. She hadn't understood what that really meant until she was on the wrong side of it. She started spending more time in the small reading corner she had set up in the bedroom. A chair by the window, a lamp, a growing stack of library books she walked to get because she had no access to money for her own. Minho had removed her from their joint accounts. She had a small amount of cash she'd saved from before, enough for groceries and basics for now, but shrinking. She started writing in a journal. Just to have somewhere to put things. Just to have some corner of the world where she could say what was true without someone telling her she was being dramatic. She wrote about her father a lot in those pages. She wrote about the butterscotch candy. She wrote about Savannah and the green dress. She wrote about the arcade and beating Minho at air hockey 4 times, back when she had believed his laughter was real. Maybe parts of it were. That was the thing that haunted her most. The uncertainty. Because a person can't perform every single moment, can they? Some of those Saturdays. Some of those drives. Some of those conversations at 2 a.m. when they talked about things that had nothing to do with money or inheritance or plans. Maybe some of it was real. Maybe none of it was. She didn't know which answer was worse. She called her mother once during this period. Just picked up the phone and dialed, not sure what she was hoping for. Linda answered and they talked for a few minutes about nothing. The weather, a television show, a neighbor back in Charlotte. Then Amara said quietly, "Mama, I think I made a mistake." Silence. With Minho, Amara continued, "I think something is really wrong." Linda sighed. And Amara recognized that sigh instantly, across all the years, across all the distance. The same sigh from when she was 12 years old and tried to explain what Gerald was doing. "Amara," Linda said, "you always do this. You always find something to be unhappy about." She hung up. She sat in her chair by the window for a long time after that, watching the Atlanta traffic below. She thought about her father. About how different everything might have been if he had just stayed. If his heart had held. If she had grown up with someone who actually saw her. She wasn't sleeping well. Wasn't eating much. She started having this feeling in her chest sometimes, a strange, heavy pressure that she told herself was just stress, just heartbreak, just the physical weight of everything she was carrying. She ignored it. She wrote in her journal and ignored it. She walked to the library and ignored it. She sat in her chair and watched the city and ignored it. But your body doesn't let you ignore things forever. Don't go anywhere. We are almost at the part of this story that will stay with you for a long time. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. It literally takes 2 seconds and it helps so much. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I want to know. Thursday night in November. Atlanta had gone cold early that year. The kind of cold that sneaks up on you, no warning, no build-up. Just suddenly there. The penthouse windows were fogged at the edges. Outside, the city lights blurred soft in the mist. Amara was alone. She had been alone most of the week. Minho had barely come home, just passing through to grab clothes or collect something from his office. Vanessa had been with him, from what she could piece together. The apartment had that hollow feeling again. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. The kind that reminds you exactly how empty a big space can feel when nobody in it actually cares if you're breathing. She sat in her chair by the window with her journal open on her lap. But she wasn't writing tonight. She was just looking at the city and thinking about her father. She thought about the way David Johnson knocked on her door every single night before bed, even when she was a teenager and pretended she didn't need it anymore. 2 knocks. Every time. Then his voice, "All good, little sunrise?" She hadn't had anyone check on her in a very long time. The pressure in her chest was back. It had been coming and going for weeks now, this heavy, uncomfortable weight sitting right in the center of her chest, sometimes spreading to her left shoulder. She had told herself it was grief, told herself it was stress, told herself the body carries sadness like a physical object, and this was just that. But tonight it felt different. Heavier. Deeper. Less like an emotion and more like something mechanical going wrong. She shifted in the chair. Tried to find a comfortable position. Couldn't. She picked up her phone and looked at it for a while. Then she called Minho. Not because she believed things would change. Not because she thought he would answer with the voice of the man who had once driven her through Atlanta with the windows down and her playlist playing and no particular place to be. She called him because the pressure in her chest was now moving, spreading down her left arm in a slow, strange wave, and something in her body was sending signals her mind was only just beginning to translate. It rang 4 times. Voicemail. She waited. Pressed call again. Across town in Virginia Highland, inside a restaurant with warm lighting and soft jazz and a corner booth with a white tablecloth, Minho's phone lit up. Amar. Vanessa was mid-laugh about something. A story she was telling about a woman at a boutique who had been rude to her. She stopped when she caught Minho glancing at the screen. "Who is it?" she asked, already reading the name herself. "Her," he said flatly. Vanessa made a face. Not a subtle one. A full, theatrical, eye-rolling face. Again? What does she want now? Minho watched it ring. 4 times. Then voicemail. Vanessa pointed at his plate with her fork. "Your food is getting cold." He picked up his fork. The phone lit up again. "Amar." "Wow," Vanessa said, laughing a little. A short, sharp sound. "She really doesn't quit, does she?" Minho looked at the screen. His expression stayed flat. He reached over and turned the phone face down on the white tablecloth without a word. Vanessa smiled and went back to her food. The phone buzzed again. Face down. Then again. Then once more. Then it stopped. They stayed another 40 minutes. Easy and unhurried. Vanessa ordered the chocolate dessert and ate every bite. They talked about Miami, the waterfront property, the December weather, what kind of furniture would work in the main living room. The planning felt good. Concrete. Like everything was moving exactly the way it was supposed to move. Minho's phone did not light up again. They took it as a sign that she had finally gotten the message. Back in the penthouse, Amar had called 7 times total. After the 7th call went straight to voicemail, he had declined it manually, sent it away without even letting it ring. Her hand dropped to her lap. The pressure in her chest was no longer just uncomfortable. It was wrong. Unmistakably, terrifyingly wrong. The pain moved through her left arm like something heavy being dragged slowly. Her jaw ached. She was sweating even though the apartment was cold. She tried to stand and her legs wouldn't cooperate the way legs are supposed to. She grabbed the arm of the chair. She knew, in the way your body communicates things that your brain is too frightened to say directly, that this was a cardiac arrest beginning. That her heart, which had been carrying so much for so long, was now failing in the most literal sense possible. She reached for her phone one last time. Fingers shaking badly now. She found his name, still her most called contact, and pressed call. He declined it immediately. Straight to voicemail. Not even a ring. She tried to speak. To say something. To leave something behind. But what came out was just a small, unsteady exhale. And then the phone slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor beside the chair. She thought about her father. About cedar wood and butterscotch candy and 2 knocks on a bedroom door every single night. About a man who had loved her so carefully and so completely that he had planned for her future even while dying, trusting that someone would make sure she was safe. She thought about sunflowers. About Savannah. About an arcade in Buckhead on a rainy Saturday and beating a Mafia boss at air hockey 4 times and laughing so hard she had to sit down. She thought about a gold bracelet with her name engraved on the inside that she still wore every day because she hadn't been able to take it off. She thought about 2 knocks. All good, little sunrise? She wasn't. She never got to tell him. Her heart gave out at 10:52 p.m. on a Thursday in November. Alone in a chair by a foggy window in a penthouse that had never truly been hers. Wearing a gold bracelet from a man who had turned her phone face down on a white tablecloth and gone back to his dessert. Min-Ho came home just after midnight. He saw her in the chair. He thought she was asleep. He said her name. Then louder. Then he crossed the room and understood in the way the body always understands before the mind is ready. He picked up her phone from the floor. 7 missed calls to his number. The last one at 10:49 p.m. declined manually. By his own hand. While Vanessa laughed about a woman at a boutique. He stood there for a long time, holding that phone. He called Vanessa. She answered quickly, easy, half distracted by something on television. "She's gone," he said. The pause. "What do you mean gone?" Vanessa said. "Cardiac arrest," he said. "She's gone." Silence. Longer this time. Then Vanessa said, "Are you serious right now?" "Yes." Another pause. Then, very carefully, like someone doing a quick calculation, she said, "Okay, do what you need to do tonight. Call me in the morning." That was it. That was all. No tears. No, "I'm so sorry." No rushing across town. Just, "Call me in the morning." Like it was an inconvenience that needed to be handled. Like Amara's entire life had been nothing more than a step in a process that had now been completed. Min-Ho set the phone down on the nightstand. Next to the gold bracelet he'd picked up from the floor without thinking. He looked at the bracelet for a moment. Her name on the inside. Simple. Personal. Then he called 911. The funeral was small. Linda came and stood through it looking smaller than Amara had ever described her. Like grief had arrived but was no longer sure it had the right address. Vanessa wore dark colors and kept an appropriate distance. 3 months later, she and Min-Ho were in Miami. The waterfront property was everything she had wanted. Wide open windows, warm salt air, the sound of water from every room at every hour. She redecorated top to bottom. New furniture. New colors. New everything. Nothing in that house looked like Charlotte or Atlanta or Nashville or any chapter of any life that was no longer useful to them. The money from the Charlotte property. The Tennessee land. The trust that David Johnson had built quietly and carefully for his little sunrise. All of it, flowing freely now, managed easily, enjoyed without complication. No consequences arrived. No justice came knocking. They took trips. They made plans. They lived well and lived loudly and lived in every space that Amara's inheritance had made possible. Min-Ho was quieter than before. That was the one thing Vanessa noticed. He went through every motion, dinners, travel, the Miami property, the plans, but something in him had settled into a stillness that hadn't been there before. Not guilt exactly. Not grief exactly. Something with no clean name. Something that sat behind his eyes in the late hours when the house was quiet and the water moved outside the window. He kept the gold bracelet in the nightstand on his side of the bed. Vanessa saw it once. She looked at it. She closed the drawer and walked to the kitchen and made coffee and never mentioned it. Because some things, even for people like Vanessa, are better left in the drawers where they live. Min-Ho never talked about the 7 missed calls. Never said out loud what he knew, that each one of those calls had been Amara's heart failing in real time while he sat in a restaurant in Virginia Highland with his phone face down on a white tablecloth. He knew. He just kept living. They both did. With the sunflower money and the Tennessee land and the Charlotte property and the Miami waterfront and every beautiful thing that had once been meant for a little girl whose father called her his little sunrise and believed, really, truly believed, that leaving her everything would be enough to keep her safe. It wasn't. But somewhere in all of it, David Johnson had loved her right. Had seen her completely. Had knocked twice on her door every single night of her life just to make sure she was still okay. She was his little sunrise. And she deserved so much better than every single person who came after him. If this story wrecked you the way it wrecked me putting it together, Please subscribe right now because we tell stories like this every single week and you deserve to be here for all of them. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, whether it's Georgia, California, Texas, London, or anywhere else in this world. And share this video with somebody who needs to hear Amara's story today.